Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Option Menu Crew podcast. This is episode 44. With you today, I'm your crew member and default settings, Ryan, and with me, the inverted toggle setting, insert your y-axis setting, Ed. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I was trying to remember what I said, but that is what I said, that I
Yep.
was inverted camera.
Yep. Invert the y-axis, or are you
Yeah.
also invert the x-axis, or are you just the
I don't
y-axis?
think does anyone invert the x-axis? I don't want to meet that person.
Some some people do, if that's the way, like, because that has to do with the whole that idea people have about the right stick of it's, well, I treat it like the way of the back of my head would swivel, and like I turn that, so it's like I go
Those
back,
people are
like,
psycho. Those people are psychopaths.
I,
That's crazy.
I see the logic, and I really is whatever works for you is fine, because it is a video game. But yeah, that's I think that's kind of strange. uh But yeah, but I get inverted on a flight stick when you're doing a flight game, because that's how it works in real life. Although I actually don't like inverted as much anymore for flight games too, and I get kind of confused. My brain does like a weird like um bounces back and forth between, well, I'm flying, but no, I'm used to camera working this way, especially if there's like a reticle on screen for like aiming and shooting, and when it's a flying thing. Um, so that's tricky there. Now for this episode, boy, this is another monetization episode. We're going to talk about the concept of voting with your wallet. And now this should be something that everyone really is familiar with, in terms of the simplest way of explaining it is just, look, if you like something, pay for it, support it. If you through official channels. If you don't like something, don't pay for it. Just leave it. And not necessarily, and sure, some people say like boycott, but boycott is more like a mass movement, whereas like individually, it's like you just don't spend your money on it. So you're not uh, saying, so you're saying no to it. However, I've been thinking about it a lot, especially over the last couple episode, a few episodes of monetization series, and of course over all of our podcast episodes and just in general. And I've brought up some of those concerns where it's just there's a lot of nuance lacking in the realities of how money is actually looked at in terms of the video game industry. And by listening to other podcasts and industry insiders and video game journalists, and those who talk about the way businesses think, and shareholders, the publishers, etc., most of the big decision makers, especially at like the AAA level and some of the other places, vote with your wallet has become a lot trickier a concept. And also society, and we'll be getting into all these different points here, and it's so, we're not trying to give anyone answers here today. We really just want to discuss about the different points and our perspectives, and some of the other perspectives we've heard about how to properly use your money to support video games, and also just how messy it is. And I don't know. We'll see if maybe we come up with something. But this is not about coming with the answer. This is just more about talking about how there is a problem, and I think people need to be more conscious of how to spend money properly, not just in the video game industry. This can go out to other stuff, but how also it's just kind of where a lot of this is kind of messed up. And yeah, Ed, you had a really good starting point, so why don't you hop right into it for us?
Yeah, I was telling you before we started that I had read about Gran Turismo 7 that just released for PlayStation, and it's a $70 game on PlayStation 5. I guess it's 60 on last gen, but they are including an ability to buy the credits that you use to unlock the vehicles, and some of the fairly expensive ones are 3 million or more credits, and they're giving you the option to buy, I think, 2 million credits for $20. So basically, it ends up, if you want enough to buy one of those cars, you're buying like $40 worth of credits for a single car. And I mean, that's crazy, especially because the thing that's particularly egregious is it wasn't in the game to begin with. So reviewers, when they were, playing the game for review, they I can't I don't know if they were transparent that they were gonna add those, the option to buy those credits later, but I don't think it was. So I think they rated the game what they chose to, without the knowledge that these microtransactions were gonna be added later. And it's really even hard to call it a microtransaction when it's like 30 or $40 for a single car. That's
Yeah.
not micro. I mean, that's like what a full price expansion will cost. And that kind of gets into this topic because everyone's voting with their dollar, but people who want to spend more have a larger, a louder vote than people who just want to get the base game. So, you might only want to spend $70 on this game, or you might even say, like, I'm gonna wait until the price drops because I don't even want to support this new price point that Sony wants to push. Um, but the people who wanna spend more, they can spend $70, $100, $200, pretty much as they want to, because I'm sure there's plenty of cars to unlock, so if you don't wanna go through the grinding to unlock them, playing races to earn currency within the game, you can just open your wallet and have as much as you like, and those people have a much louder voice than anyone who just buys the base game even at full price.
And it's a funny part there because even them having microtransactions, which it's super shady that they added microtransactions after review, um, and that is something we also heard about happening in Crash Team Racing, which was made a big stir because that's a very scummy thing to do. The product comes out without these things, gets praised for not having it, and then they add it in order to skip all the reviews. I feel like there needs to be some serious penalties for that. Like that, maybe it sounds a little hyperbolic, but I feel like that's FTC level. Like, no, you can't do that. You can't. It'd be like opening that'd be like opening up no, it's I want to say like a daycare, like a kids thing, and then being like, oh yeah, you just pay $10 and then you come in and you have fun, and then actually I guess like Chuck E. Cheese and all those like kid entertainment places are the same thing as this, so it's not, so people are fine with it. I don't know. Um, but the point I'm latching
Yeah, but
on.
you go to Chuck E. Cheese knowing you're gonna be pumping quarters or credits into those games or whatever, so it's not like that's a surprise.
You're right. It's a bit more transparent. It's not exactly the same equivalency because it's a experience. Well, no, I guess video games are an experience as well. So never mind. Um, the point I was trying to latch on to is, or that really sticks out to me, is how does someone who doesn't spend money have a voice? Because we can look at the data. There's been plenty of reports with, especially in the mobile game market, it's the most visible. Is, look, we free to play games are driven by a very small percentage of users who pay, and they're whales. Most of the people who play don't spend any money or spend very little. So the question is, how, when you're playing a game for free, or you stop playing and be like, this is bad, this isn't good, how do you how do you voice your opinion with your money to say this game sucks, and how you get the developer to realize 80% of our players don't pay for money or stop playing after like 6 months. Our game is bad, we should stop supporting it. But when 20% spend a million a year, or whatever, a billion a year, I guess, how do if 100,000 people are spending a billion a year, then we might as well keep making the game, even though the majority of people in the world think it's trash. So the same thing happens with video games. Probably a majority of people don't like microtransactions, don't want to buy the game and play the game and unlock stuff normally, or through, I should say, traditional means at this point, which that's a sad state of affairs to say. But as long as there's, 1,000 people who are willing to pump $1,000 a month into the game, they're like, well, it's worth making the microtransactions, even though the majority of people say, no, like, we don't like microtransactions. We're not going to spend the money on it. Well, you already bought the game, so we might as well just have them there. You don't have to engage in them. Like, this is the part that drives me nuts. And it's nice when there's sometimes like companies who send out surveys to get actual feedback. And we've seen it with Japanese games. We've seen it with Western games, where they'll have betas and stuff, and people will play. They'll collect analytics, and then they'll also send out player surveys and get information on them, on what they liked, what they don't like. Famously, the Koei Tecmo with Neo, with its 2 Neo games, they did multiple pre-release betas, took player feedback, and then implemented changes and fixes into the games, and now both of those games were super successful. Triangle Strategy was a big one that had a bunch of feedback into it, and made some changes and stuff. Bravely Default, same thing happened. So we see them in multiple places, but then we also see, like, Ubisoft is famous for saying, years ago they said this back when they started annualizing Assassin's Creed, was like, hey, it makes enough money that, and you guys keep buying it, so we're just going to keep making it every year. There's an audience for it every year. And it's the same thing with sports games. Now, those are licensed exclusively, but this also speaks to the tendencies of the market. It's hard to tell a sports fan who plays video games to go, don't buy the only football game out there, because if enough of you don't buy it, then they'll stop making, when it's crappy, they'll stop making it. But the typical person is going to go, but it's the only one. If I don't buy it, then I'm not playing it. And also, they'll stop making it. And that's what business owners do. That's what the publishers, I'm not going to say all developers. Developers, it's a different story, because they're the ones who actually like want to make the games. And typically it comes from a more artistic standpoint of like, yes, we want to make money, but we are trying to do a specific experience, and we hope that experience resonates with a large enough market to make it profitable. Whereas publishers are the ones who typically go, we're going to put in tons of microtransactions because we are stockholders and shareholders, and this is a business and we want to make money, and we don't care about the art. Try to make it as cheap as possible, as crappy as possible, as profitable as possible. And we don't care about anything else. So it's a whole different decision making. So I'm not just blaming like developers, and yes, there are of course some scummy developers out there. That happens. That's how it works. But a lot of the times it's because of publishers and people who don't actually care about any of the art, where these decisions for this crappy stuff comes in. And I've mentioned that before. So it's, how do we, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. It's nice when there's a survey and you can be like, and I've filled out a bunch of Nintendo surveys about games where I can say the frame rate was bad, I'm not buying this. Like, these features, these were the problems. This is why I didn't like your game. This is why I stopped playing it. But at the same time, once you buy the game, even if you return it, the money's spent. Like, especially if you buy it from, their digital return policies are pretty bad, especially on the closed console markets.
Xbox is okay. I've done a digital return on Xbox. It was like, Xbox is almost as good as Steam. I bought the Nickelodeon All Stars last fall, and I found out that Mike and I couldn't play it cross-gen. So I was on Series X, he was an Xbox One. It wouldn't let us play together.
Which sucks.
So I immediately requested a refund, got it like an hour later. So and I had already downloaded and started the game. So Xbox is pretty good. Steam is obviously the best, but Sony and Nintendo are just abysmal with regards to refund policies.
Yeah. I don't know what Epic Games Store's return policy is. And yeah, it's, but even just retail, like, you can return, even if you buy a retail copy, well, for GameStop, it's not necessarily a big deal because they love doing the used market cycle. But the retail stores buy their copies from the companies, and then they sell them to us. And then once we return a game, like, Sure, that feeds back into the retail store's data, and they might not buy as many copies later. But I forget if there's ever a game that was returned so many times that they had to start getting refunds back um, from the actual distributors in order to because of how bad it was or things. I'm sure there was some like games that were recalled and
Do you
things like
think do
that.
you think that happened with Cyberpunk? Wasn't that like the famous example where they were just, "Oh, just return it if you don't like it." I wonder
Uh,
if like Best Buy and GameStop were taking back returns.
I'm sure at the retail level it's not hard, especially because like Walmart and stuff has really lax return policies. So that I wouldn't be surprised, or even Amazon as well. So I wouldn't be surprised. But it was a huge deal when like PlayStation was getting, uh, because they delisted it. They were like, we don't want to deal with this. So they
Yeah.
did refund a bunch of copies digitally. But yeah, that was a crazy moment. So yeah, I just ranted a bunch, Ed, and I know we're gonna rant a lot more. So with your perspective, can you recall any times where you've been burned by buying something and just like uh, you feel any sort of regret about like why don't they do get this right?
You probably know what I'm gonna say, don't you?
Not off the top of my head, but as soon as you say it, I'll be like, oh yeah.
I think I've mentioned it before, but probably the most recent example was Shin Megami Tensei 5. Yeah, so that I hate to like harp on that so much because like I think it's fundamentally a good game. And part of it was the performance, part of it was like not exactly for me. I think I'd like to revisit it in the future, maybe if it came to PlayStation or PC or whatever platform could run it better. But not only was the performance kind of disappointing, um, the actual like premium edition I got was kind of lame too. So I guess I'm kind of glad I got it. You know, it's nice to have the box and the collectibles, and some opening up that stuff up gives me like that warm feeling. You know, it's fun to open up a fancy box, but it wasn't exactly up to the standards that I wanted it to be. Um, and that and I I think that's also part of voting with your dollar is, and all these companies offer these special editions that are double, triple, or quadruple the price of the the regular version of the game. And that's one way that you can give the publishers more money for the games that they release. And I guess I don't really know what the cost of some of these goodies they include in the special editions, but I would guess that they probably have a higher profit margin on their collector's editions than their base game. But sometimes it's really high quality, like um, you know, the Metroid Dread art book was pretty nice. And I was pretty happy with that one. But it really was just an art book and a steel book. So like, did that really cost them $30 more on top of the base thing? I don't know. I don't have access to these numbers, but I I guess I'm kind of like rambling here, but my point is one way that you can vote with your dollar is to purchase these special editions. And whether or not that's a good thing, it probably isn't, because then you're giving them their money ahead of time. You're not waiting for any marker of quality, whether it's reviews or other user impressions. And it, sometimes you end up disappointed, and then you've already spent them the money. But it's funny. I think we joke about this because I keep ordering them. I don't learn, do I? I I'll share what I recently ordered the special edition of Triangle Strategy. But granted, I did play the demo and I did read reviews. I just happened to notice that on Amazon UK that I could order it. So at least I was like semi-informed about that.
Hmm.
Um, but I also pre-ordered the special edition of Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes, and I don't know anything about that. That one could run like garbage, and it probably will. and I've already given them my money. So I don't know. I guess part of it is from my perspective, like even like if a game isn't perfect, if it's like a niche series that I would like to support, like I'm okay with trying to support it. But I am conflicted. It's tough, like because you can be disappointed, but like you said, if nobody buys these games, even if they're not perfect, if there's like redeeming qualities about them, you're not going to get any more attempts at those types of genres.
Yeah. Um, so a couple of points like for properly voting with your wallet that I've heard is one, don't pre-order. If you're really not if you're really trying to discourage certain practices, like don't pre-order games, don't give them their money until you've read reviews, seen previews, played a demo, etc. Um, I also advocate for renting all the time. You know that, Ed. The audience should know that at this point. I've mentioned GameFly on this all the time. Game Pass is out there now. That's a pretty good way to try games at a very significant discount. Um, you can buy games used. That's a good way of kind of using the system as like a rental if you want. Is you can buy the game really cheap, uh, because when you buy a game used, the money doesn't go back to developers or the publishers. It's strictly with the retail store.
Well, I was gonna say if you buy a game used at GameStop, you get a 7-day return period, no questions asked. So if you're not sure about a game, buy it used, play it for 10 hours, and then return it if you hate it. So,
So there you go.
it's
Yeah, it's
yeah.
it's literally a return policy, or it's basically a rental policy. You get 7 days
Mhm.
to return it if you don't like it, and considering it's already discounted, so you're just putting down a deposit to
Yeah.
to get back, which is great. Um, that actually sounds amazing. I might start using. Other than I have gameplay, I might like go and pick up certain stuff if I'm having trouble, and then just return it after like a day or two. Um, but then yeah, and GameFly also offers used game purchases as well, which is great because you'll rent the game if you like it, then you can pay the rest and you can keep you can keep the disc or the cart that you already have, and they'll send you the box and everything, which is also really useful. So it's just kind of the reverse of what you just said there for GameStop, which both are cool, both work. It's nice to have the return policies, but yeah, you can buy games used for things if you want to try it out and you're not convinced. Buy it really cheap, and then you could always trade it back and go buy a new copy or buy a digital copy. Um, Either way. Now, I understand that a lot of the times buying used games defeats the purpose. So the other thing, wait until there's a discount. Always a great thing. Ed loves a good deal. So, he'd advocate for that. And then the other part is, even if you're planning on getting the game, and if there was something wrong with it, like say the microtransaction thing, just wait 2 weeks, because the first 2 weeks of a game's release are like their biggest profit driving thing. So if people just waited and didn't buy things for 2 weeks, it would send a huge signal to companies that there's issues here. But of course, if there's something you just totally don't like at all, don't buy it. But the problem is, just like all this, like when we get these games that are low quality, when you get these games that add these problematic DLC or have microtransactions and things, even if they don't, I mean, even if people don't engage in it, like they don't care. The decision makers don't care about necessarily how many people are engaging with the bad parts, with them. They don't care that it's only 1,000 people spending that buying microtransactions. They care that the 1,000 people out of, like, let's say 1 million copies sold are spending 1,000 a month or hundreds a month, like recurring. That's what they care about. They're like, this is worth it, instead of realizing, wow, this is really bad because only this many people engage in it, because that's not the point. So instead, they don't look at it as like, well, we got to fix this so it's not so bad and get more people spending. They're like, or actually no, we shouldn't do this. Like, people are less likely to buy the next game. It's like, no, people are used to it now, and it's like, how can we manipulate people psychologically to make them more inclined to spend money and get more people recurring transactions? It's so scummy. It sucks. I'm not saying businesses aren't allowed to make money. I'm saying do it legitimately. And I know people would argue, well, this is legitimate. Like, it's the scummiest way to be legit. It's like saying pyramid schemes, because they work, are legitimate. Like no, that's not correct. And I don't really care what other people think about this. There should be ethics in business, and there should be moral codes, and there should be like agreed upon. Hey, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't be crappy to humanity and society and try to exploit people psychologically in order to make maximum profit for infinite dollars when it really doesn't matter. It's dumb. Also, a point that frustrates me a lot, and I'll bring this up because this is a specific example that's coming up for me kind of personally. Capcom has infamously said, like, we do the Capcom test, quote unquote. And actually, Ed, you and I listened to the same podcast, Castle Super Beast, and they were talking how the Capcom test is dumb. So I don't know. Do you recall hearing about that, Ed? Before I explain to the audience.
No, refresh my memory.
You got it. So the Capcom test is something that came out a while ago, and they did this with a couple games, and they've been saying it for like Darkstalkers and things. Capcom says, well, we're re-releasing the old games in order to see if there's interest for a new game to come out. That's a lie. That's crap. Now, if they actually followed through, it would kind of make sense. But we haven't seen a follow-through once yet. Instead, what they do is they are re-releasing games, specifically the Darkstalkers fighting game is something people have said, like, hey, there's a bunch of other fighting games that you have historically that are really cool, and it'd be nice if you brought some of those back and gave them like updated treatment, or at least, you know, gave us versions that we could play on the modern consoles. Now, they just announced, I'm so sorry I don't have this off the top of my head, it's like Capcom Fighting Collection or something like that. Capcom, they just announced it. It was with the Street Fighter 6 announcement. Oh yeah, it was. Capcom Fighting Collection was announced right before the Street Fighter 6 teaser, and it's going to include all 5 of the Darkstalkers games, plus Hyper Street Fighter 2, which was previously only available on Nintendo Switch. Red Earth, which I don't believe was ever ported to a console, which was sort of like a sort of an RPG fighting game. There's only like 4 playable characters, and as you level up and go through things, you earn new moves for your character, but it's a 2D fighting game. And then a couple other cool, like, niche and previously unreleased Capcom fighting games. All of them are going to have online rollback netcode. So, to one extent, Capcom has finally been like, okay, we know people love the old Darkstalkers games. We know there's an audience for that. So we're just going to have our teams rebuild those games, give them all rollback netcode so people can play these versions online forever, at least. So that's great. That in and of itself is actually cool. And a bunch of these other games are now going to be available and have like training modes and stuff and a bunch of cool little features. So on that, I think this collection's worthwhile on its own. When people say, if you care about Darkstalkers and you want to buy the next one, I just respectfully disagree with people who buy into on the principle that Capcom is actually planning on making a new Darkstalkers games if these games sell a ton of copies. I disagree with that, and here's why. They should throw us a bone. If there's the gaming legacy is strong, but people, and I'm like this as well, like sometimes I don't want to go back to the old thing. I want the old thing to get the modern facelift so it gets rid of all the crappy, annoying stuff, and I get the more cleaned up, modernized versions with pretty graphics and art styles and high frame rates and resolutions and the good netcode, and it's all modernized. That's what I want. I want them to make the new version that's modernized and good, instead of making me go back and have to deal with the old jank that's never going to be like balanced. And I'm talking fighting games specifically right now, so that's old and jank and stuff like that. I want them to do the thing. It's kind of like the same thing with like Final Fantasy VII Remake, where it's like, I want the newer version. Like, the old version is still good, but it's dated in some regards, and I'd love to have the new version and a bunch of people who are not going to tolerate the old jank to be able to experience that, to talk about it, because it is such a good thing, and it sells, and it will speak to a new generation. So when Capcom re-releases these and then says, well, if it sells enough, then we'll create a new one, I'm like, no, because you can also mess that up. Now, I look at the series Soul Calibur 6 from I think the team name's Project Soul, but it's Bandai Namco. Namco specifically is the property, is the developer, is the publisher, or I think you call them developer, but maybe publisher. But either way, that has done the Soul Calibur games. And so here's what happens. Like, at least they threw us a bone. Soul Calibur 1 was great. Soul Calibur 2 was excellent. Soul Calibur 3 was weirdly only on PlayStation 2 and hasn't been re-released other places. Don't know why. They then put out Soul Calibur 4, and like it wasn't as well received. Then they put out Soul Calibur 5, even worse received. And then they heard us and they were like, okay, well, we're going to go back to making the type of game people want, with the feel they want. We're going to put in all the classic characters plus some of the new favorites. We're going to have a character system. We're going to try having a single player thing. And at least they tried. They put it out. Now, it doesn't have good netcode, which sucks. So that game is falling apart. They were underfunded, so they did some bad DLC practices, but over time they made up for it and they put out some really cool characters. And the game is still really fun. They do have some controversial mechanics, but the thing is that game didn't sell amazing. Even though it's actually really fun, it's got some huge flaws. But people love the Soul Calibur series. If they could just actually go, you know what? We're going to do a super big Soul Calibur 7. You're going to get a huge budget. Make it good. And here's the money to make it good. Do it. Don't be shady. Put in the good netcode. Put in a huge character creator. Put in a really cool single-player story mode. And just go for it. And see what happens. And then, if that flops, if they were given a legit chance to make a really good game at a good budget, with the budget they needed, and then it releases and it still flops, okay, you know what? Let the series die. That's fine. It's just not, the market's not there for it anymore. Now, there's a thing like with multiplayer games and stuff, you could say like, well, there's always, and I harken back to a point you were making, Ed, is that multiplayer games are one of the few types of formulas of games where when people even if the people bought the game but stopped playing it, that speaks. What game did you mention? I forgot. Because I was going to say, oh, you were going to say Shin Megami Tensei. I was going to say, actually, so don't feel bad, because I still, to this day, anyone who brings it up, like, Destiny 1 vanilla, like, I'm like, no, I don't care. Destiny really flopped. It's not what I wanted. It's that initial release, I am super burned. I do not want to go back to Destiny. It's free to play. I have dabbled with Destiny 2 because a friend wanted to. And I was just like, it's still, it's built like a service game. Like, don't make a service game. Borderlands is right over there. That it shows you how good that can be. You make a good solid core game around this fundamental system, then you release paid expansions that are really good, and people keep buying it, and you do regular updates. Randy Pitchford sucks. Gearbox has bad management, which is unfortunate, at least in that regard, and bad ownership, I'll say. But they made a pretty darn good game, and their model with Borderlands, especially like Borderlands 1, 2, and 3, minus some little quibbles, they're really good. That they have a great system in place and proves like how you can do things. And I hope Wonderlands is good. I'm gonna wait a while, probably till I buy it, because especially with all those things. Randy Pitchford's still in charge of Gearbox, and I don't want that guy. I wish that that guy got kicked out from ownership after it was proven he's a criminal. Like, and I know people say, well, he's not necessarily proven a criminal. I'm like, dude's probably a pedophile. So let's not mince. Just like with Bobby Kotick or whatever. His like the evidence, like he should be in jail. There's enough evidence to prove that guy should be his money taken away and be thrown in jail. Let's not mince words. So yeah, no, it sucks. So I'm gonna wait on some of that stuff, and I waited on Borderlands 3. Now people might say, well, what message did you send? I don't know. That's the thing. Enough people bought Borderlands 3, and that game was super jank on release and glitchy and bad. Now they optimized it over time and they fixed it, and that's where like it being on Epic Game Store also upset me. But by waiting, I eventually got the most polished version, and there was all the updates, and I got it for um, I got it on sale. It was less than it would have cost me if I would have paid for it in bulk, um, and it was worth it. I had a great time. I co-opted with my cousin. It was fun. I thought by the end of it, I was like, "Darn, this was really good. This was a good time." All the other stuff sucks. So yeah, I believe in it. These companies should be a little less risk averse and just be like, look, oh yeah, the point I was trying to harken back to is just these companies need to be a little less risk averse and should give the money to make a honest attempt at something. But there's the flip side, and then Ed, I'll toss it over to you to respond. Is there's a chance that there's games with good ideas that come out, but the initial game doesn't sell well because of X, Y, and Z. So I'll say, for example, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, and I think that one suffered more because of Avengers being so bad. So people were very tentative. But then once people found out, like it started selling, or at least it got way more positive word of mouth. We don't know. I have to look up what the sales numbers are, if there is any sales numbers actually about Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy because of Square Enix recent statements about it being a disappointment. But the other thing is like, well, look, it didn't make money for these specific reasons. Give it a second shot. If you get everything right and make a critical darling and nobody buys it, then okay, it legit failed. You made a great game. Not enough people liked it. It was fine. That is what it is. It's very unfortunate, but you made, at least I could say you made the honest attempt and it didn't work, and we just go, well, called classic. That's unfortunate. And so I'd say, like, for you, Ed, it'd be like this is like the 13 Sentinels thing. But luckily some of the
13 Sentinels has actually picked up some steam, so I don't know if that's a gap to comparison. I think Atlas is pretty happy with the sales of 13 Sentinels.
oh, sure. So yeah, there's that too. Um, but yeah, or I guess for me personally, it'd be Okami. Like Okami's never gonna get the sales that I thought. Like it should have been like a Horizon Zero Dawn or like a Legend of Zelda where people like play it and be like, it sells like 5,000 copies, 5,000 million copies. Um, like it should
Yeah,
have
it's
sold
like
like
Doctor Evil.
I would love to have it seen like 5 million copies, or somewhere around there, to be like, yeah, this is something we'll revisit every once in a while. And while Okami 1 is an excellent game, um, and then the Okami Den on DS was poorly timed. Like I've got my issues with that too, which I think is more the marketing. Capcom never threw the marketing dollars behind it to push that game into the mainstream. And I wish that I still hope that maybe someday because
Was
I
Okami Den a sequel?
yeah, Okami Den's a sequel.
Because I was the one game I was thinking about that I really liked that did not do well, and I think like Okami Den didn't have great marketing, was Neo: The World Ends With You. I know
No.
that just like bombed, especially in Japan, but I don't know. It, like that one's difficult because they made the anime to kind of catch people up if you hadn't played the original game, and they had ported it to Switch, but the sequel was like heavily tied to the plot of the original game. I think you could probably enjoy it as a standalone game, but there are a lot of callbacks to characters from the first game, so it's like a niche sequel to a niche original game. So that one, I think, unfortunately, just did not perform to expectations. So I doubt we'll ever get another one in that series, unless it's just some other vanity project. Maybe there's the one person in the company who's like, "Oh, we got to make a sequel," but I doubt that's going to happen. I'm shocked it got a sequel in the first place. To me, I was thrilled to hear that, and it was like a great surprise. But I wonder who thought that was a good idea. Because like, how many people actually played The World Ends With You on DS? I think it sold like a couple 100,000 copies, like 250,000. Not a lot. So that one is one that I thought was a really good game that just it neither of them really ever took hold. Um, but you talk about games that are, at least some of them are highly acclaimed, that just don't sell well. I mean, I know you're a huge fan of Platinum, and that's kind of like the the greatest example of a developer who generally makes good games, but just can't seem to get them to sell.
Yeah, and they get held back on multiple fronts with things. I guess with Platinum specifically, I think Bayonetta 1 was probably the one that was marketed and properly available. Um, it was multi-platform. Sega developed it, or Sega published it. Um, but Bayonetta 2 barely happened. The only reason it happened was because of Nintendo, and that's why it was exclusive to the Wii U and then eventually to Switch. Um, I guess it sold decently. Uh, Nintendo did then commission Platinum Games to make Astral Chain. Astral Chain's a good game, but it's shackled to the Switch hardware, so that game doesn't run as well as it should. It's only a 30 FPS game. Um, and then Bayonetta 3 is going to be shackled to it. They're trying to run at 60 FPS on Switch hardware, so they'll achieve it. They'll hit it, but it will be graphically compromised in a lot of ways, so it will not be a showpiece like it needs to be for it to be a spectacle. Um,
I
and
thought the trailer they showed in the fall looked pretty rough.
yeah, yeah, it looks pretty rough in some spots, and overall, it's not gonna be great. It'll still be fun to play, but people are gonna see it and go, eh. Now, and I know that's uh, it's funny to say like graphics aren't everything, visuals aren't everything, but people get weird and talk about things differently. So sometimes a lot of good art direction can really save a game. Bayonetta though skews towards a abstracted realism art style, so that stuff sticks out more, especially with the way Switch hardware has dated itself over time, and the size and scale that Bayonetta tries to go for. That's something where it would be much it building that game on a PlayStation 5 rather than a Switch would be a significantly different visual experience. So, yeah, Platinum keeps getting put in rough situations, like uh, their deals with Activision, which we've mentioned before. But they had to make 3 license games under Activision, which include Legend of Korra, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutants in Manhattan, and um,
Tr-
Transformers:
Devastation.
Devastation,
Isn't that?
which that was the
Yeah.
only one well regarded. Had a really good art style. The combat was tight. Game design was really good. A lot of people really liked it. They had good voice acting and stuff. That was the one that ended up working out the best for them. I really like the art style of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutants in Manhattan. I think that one actually looks really cool, and it was very close to being good enough. But yeah, and now it's delisted, which sucks. I actually wish I would have bought a copy on PC while I had the chance. And then I played Legend of Korra. It was rough. It was just underfunded. Like they were, it wasn't Platinum's fault. They did what they could with the resources they had. They were given a very limited time and a very limited budget. And this is once again also speaks to something that is a problem that I have is like license games you shouldn't be stingy with license game now. People love the Avatar, Last Airbender, and Legend of Korra like series. And yes, I'm aware of the fan base's like contention with Korra. I don't care. That universe is beloved. If they would have actually like put the money in to make these like super good action games, like holy crap, like you would have had a franchise there of games coming out. Of course, I don't want them milking it too hard, but you know, one new game every 2 years like would have been excellent. Um, TMNT. I mean, you're always going to get a new Ninja Turtle game. That TMNT Shredder's Revenge. That's harkening back to old classic beat 'em ups in the original 80 series. That's that's going to be great, but that is a simplified design. It's going to be a budget game. It's going to be like $30 at most on release. So that looks really cool, but yeah, it's a shame when these like new ones don't resonate. Devastation did pretty well critically and commercially, I think. But yeah, that's once again these publishers, these money makers going like, well, just kick it out there because it's got a IP attached to it that people will buy. And you can even see that kind of hubris with like Square Enix with Avengers, where they like probably forced them, Crystal Dynamics, to make a multiplayer game instead of just a solo single player game. And then
You don't think Marvel was behind that? You don't think they wanted a big money making live service game?
based
Or do
on
you think that was all Square Enix?
based on what happened with Spider-Man for PS4, I don't think Marvel like really cares. I think they would have like that. They're definitely on board for like microtransaction stuff, but Square has a public history recorded of saying they want to do more service games. They want to ship more games incomplete so they can move to the service model so they can do recurring transactions. They they have a history, and it's of making these statements in their shareholder meetings or wherever, insiders or something blowing the
Well,
whistle on it.
everybody wants to do that now. Didn't Sony say they want 10 live service games by 2026?
No, they said they're
Ubisoft,
launching 10 service games by 2026.
yeah, Ubisoft is trying to make like an Assassin's Creed live service game. Microsoft is Forza and Halo already live service games, and they have microtransactions and DLC, and they're some of them are on Game Pass, but they make up their money in other ways.
Which is fine actually. That's that point there, making up your money in other places makes sense to me. This is where like with Capcom, I go take your Monster Hunter and Resident Evil money and make the fighting games we want. Like do it. Spend the money. Stop like what they did with Street Fighter 5, and I'm not the biggest fan of Street Fighter's gameplay, but Street Fighter 5's microtransaction economy is trash. And what they did over time where they like tanked their own in-game currency economy in order to make people have to buy stuff more. I'm like, no. Don't do this. I'm also like fighting games I think is weird. I'm an
Did you buy them though? Did you buy the characters in Street Fighter 5?
actually, not really. Um, so they had a system where if you played enough, you could earn in-game currency to buy DLC characters with just in-game currency.
Is that what you did?
For most of them, yeah. I would get the new character, and that new character would have some stuff that would let me get enough currency to get like more than halfway to the next one, and then I just play online, earn a bunch of extra currency. I think like one entire season pass. Other than I think I bought maybe the first character, uh, the rest of them I bought, or a couple of them, because then I stopped playing the game. I think I only made it through season 3 before I stopped, and there was season 4 and 5 of DLC. So I stopped playing after that. No, so no. I only bought a couple. I did buy like one or two costumes, but they let you do a la carte. So I was like, oh yeah, let me buy that. I'll that's fine with me. And that kind of stuff's fine as well. Like I don't buy a ton, of costumes, but every once in a while, if it's really cool, I'll spend a couple bucks, especially if it's a la carte and I can just buy the specific one I want. So, yeah, that kind of stuff is just disgusting. This infinite growth, like super obscene profit thing. And I'm not saying I don't want things to be profitable or whatnot. I just believe in much more reasonable expectations and much more reasonable like sustainability. It shouldn't just be like, well, we're gonna stop like Capcom and other companies. Now they're making Pragmata, so they are trying to invest in a new IP. We don't know anything about it other than it's sci-fi themed. So that's interesting. Resident Evil, it's great to see that series kind of come back and as a survival horror game be this niche game style and has now exploded in popularity to the point that it's actually very successful. It's a shame what happened with Resident Evil 3 Remake. That's really sad. But 7 and 8, they had 7 got a bunch of DLC, but it wasn't like microtransaction DLC. It was like normal expansions, which were really cool. And one story chapter expansion was completely free. Resident Evil 8's got upcoming DLC. Like they didn't even plan DLC. They just were like, yeah, game sold really well. we're gonna make DLC for it. So, and that's the way I think it makes sense. Like, sure, you can have ideas in the background. Like, if we were to do extra content for this game, like, what are we thinking about? And you can have assets and stuff and things get ready. But like, I firmly believe that like games, the DLC cycle should be different for single player games. It should be like, did the game sell well? Did it do good? Is there room for expansion? And I was playing Scarlet Nexus and they did a couple DLC things, but a lot of it was like extra features and things like that and patching in some stuff. And they also did a lot of like there were bugs and features that were free, and then what they added in that was kind of paid was extra costumes and a couple things. Now this does suck. It was like stuff that kind of gives you some extra content for the characters for like bonding with them, extra conversations and things, and a few key features. You don't need it to beat the game, but it's neat. And then they added like a little extra story chapter as part of the final piece of DLC for the season, and it was it's $30. I think it was like $30 for the season pass for all that content. So that would be like a $90 purchase total. Um, and you
So
could
I thought of something. I
go
was
ahead.
gonna say, as much as we hate on Nintendo, um, I will give them credit for at least some of their games, even if they don't really. Some of them don't release with all the content that people want them to. But like Animal Crossing, they supported, you know, for free for 2 years, adding more and more content. They did do a DLC, the Happy Home Designer, but that's kind of like its own game.
One big
But they kept
expansion.
adding yeah, they kept adding stuff over 2 years. Mario Golf and Mario Tennis, both of those they supported, adding new,
Characters
courses,
and
adding
courses
new characters, tweaking the gameplay.
for free,
Um, yeah,
no additional
and
cost.
they probably could have charged for the new courses, and I bet people would have paid it. I know Smash Bros, they,
Smash Bros. They did.
they, yeah, they do add new characters and they charge for them, but
A lot of those characters were third party, so that would make sense for licensing
yeah,
deals.
I mean, there's licensing fees. I get why they would want to cover that,
It was
especially
it was a character, a stage,
in music.
new music, and spirits, but spirits are JPEGs. Um, but
Yeah, expensive JPEGs.
like and I mean, you kind of get two different ways about it because there's like Terry Bogard, where SNK let them take 52 tracks of music with the character, and then there's Square Enix, who like you get 11 songs with Sephiroth. I'm like, but Final Fantasy has over like 20 games of like amazing music. You can't like Dragon Quest, at least when they put on Dragon Quest Hero, that character at least got a few tracks. I think it was also 11, like, but they were tracks from all over the series. Like Final Fantasy can't even get music outside of 7, which, come on, man. Like, not even like one track that's like a medley of a bunch of different things. Gee, just, yeah, I'm sorry.
But I do think the way Nintendo does their releases and DLC is pretty fair. They have that upcoming booster pack for Mario Kart 8. It's going to be $25 for 48 courses over the next 2 years. I think that's a pretty good value. That's like 50 cents a course. Like what other game gives you, you know, piecemeal content like that for 50 cents?
I agree. That's an amazing deal. I also wanted to bring up them updating Super Mario Party with online play for free. Later when they like 18 months later. But that's cool too. Like that should have been there at launch. I'm not denying that. But the fact that it was at least free when it did come out,
Yeah.
great. But there you go. It gives that game whole new value. And that's the other thing. Like they don't look at it as, and I don't know if the numbers don't support this because there's also, I don't know how many examples there are to support this. Um, where the games, if you add features over time, people keep buying. Oh, you know what? Actually, Witcher 3 is a great example of a game that got tons and tons of free DLC over time and just kept selling and selling and selling and selling and selling. It can be done. If you support your game with new features and add-ons and things, and it's positively received, people will buy more copies of the game. Um, that's how you do it. That's what you should be doing. You should be trying to sell copies of the game, not sell additional content, because you need to create the complete package. You need to make that package affordable. Also, you need to go on sale. Nintendo
How
does
about how about Dying Light? Isn't that another one that benefited from constant updates and sales?
it did, but I don't know the difference between how much was free and how much was paid. So I don't
Okay.
know how to say.
I just heard it got a lot of
It
good
did.
post-launch support.
It did. Dying Light was supported for a long time, and players like it did well and it succeeded. So that was great. Um, and that's good and it makes sense. And I say the same thing about Borderlands, like Borderlands 3. Like it started out really jank, which is unfortunate. Like games, it I understand it's new and modern, and games should can't be expected to be like perfect, and I don't expect games to be perfect at launch. I expect them to be, functional. Save files are reliable, basic features of like I can pause cutscenes or skip, and I'm not specifically saying like, my menu doesn't cause slowdown in the game when I open and close it. It runs at an acceptable frame rate. So okay, I'm gonna call myself out on this one right now, just because. Um, I'm currently playing Elden Ring, and by the time people hear this episode, have been playing Elden Ring for since release for about 50 hours at this point, and then I'll have played it way more by the time you're hearing this episode. Yes, I bought the PC version. I was aware that there were the performance issues. I tried it out. I have a G-Sync, I have a TV that supports FreeSync, and so I'm using G-Sync through FreeSync on my TV, and it's and it is very juddery. Not unacceptably so. In some spots it's really bad. It's one of those things where like the open world is not well optimized, and that's really the worst part, but not enough in the open world requires precision timing for me to be frustrating. When you're in close spaces, it actually like goes and caps pretty close to 60 consistently, so it's like half optimized, half not. It's almost like I want to say it's optimized where it counts, but that's being too generous. So I personally can deal with it, and it's fine. And I have a 3070 card laptop, and it runs fine. I run it usually at 1440 or 1080, depending on which mode I'm in. And it's not that that at least lets me have as good a performance as I can get with a game that's just at its core not properly optimized. So it's good enough for me. And I know and I'm confident they're going to fix it, or there will be fans who figure out how to patch the game and make it work. So it's happened with all the other games before, newer games. It's just a thing. Like something's going to happen. And for a game this big,
not Bloodborne, not Bloodborne. Bloodborne's still 30 FPS, if that.
yes, with bad frame timing. I actually that's the thing. So yeah, Bloodborne's slightly different, a little more nuanced. Bloodborne is locked to 30 FPS, which sucks, but it was basically a launch PS4 title. That hardware's not that strong. It's unfortunate it never really got a full update to 60, but there's probably other technical things where this is where they should have spent the money. And I'm of the mind that Sony is going to. They're either getting a PC port ready and they'll do like a big PC and PS5 drop. They're just giving Demon's Souls some breathing room, and they've got some other stuff, or they're doing a sequel, or they're lining up another big game. Who knows? I'm of the mind they're going to do something with Bloodborne. It's just really weird we haven't heard anything new yet, but I think with the PC initiative, that's where it is. And I think that considering FromSoft's like previous history with being weird about their engines and tying their frame rates to animation in that old school methodology, Bloodborne's probably got some weird technical issues in the background. Oh, a fan did mod it to open it up to 6720, I think. But at least it's 60 if you mod your PS4 and install the fan-made mod. So the game can run. It's just the developers haven't done it. And there's other bug testing and stuff that has to be done, and I'm sure they want to update the thing and do some more with it. So who knows? Who knows what's going on there? I think Sony's going to fix that. But yeah, man, I haven't bought Bloodborne, but I think I'll give it another shot when it's released at 60. But yeah, I think FromSoft will optimize it, considering that like for Dark Souls 3, Sekiro ran really well. So I played Sekiro on PC, and that game was fine. I had like no performance issues with that. It was pretty much a solid 60. So I don't know what happened here. I don't get why with Elden Ring it wasn't, but I think that has to do with a couple things. I think it has to do with the cross generation stuff. I think whatever their target, because apparently if you play PlayStation 4, the PlayStation 4 version on PS5, that's where you get the lock 60. And that's a weird thing that's also been happening. So I think that's what happened. Like that was their base model. They might have been developing for PS4 Pro, and the PS5 is basically a souped up PS4 Pro at this point. So I'm confident they're going to optimize it. It's just going to take time for them to like go through and figure out that stuff in the open world and do whatever. I've heard some stuff. I'm not confident enough that it's the truth to hear that to say that it's definitively this is why the PC version's borked and where they messed up. But it's I'm pretty confident it'll fix it, and I'm having enough fun with it as is in spots, and it doesn't run poorly enough where it needs to for it to have definitely ruined my experience. A few button presses have been delayed and things. I've heard that there's definitely spots that are better than and worse. But yeah, like there's just core fundamental things where these games should be running a bit better, or when they're fixing it, you got to fix it for free and just put the stuff out quick, or you got to message it. That's the other part. Like message that you're going to fix this stuff.
Yeah, don't tell that to Rockstar. How many times are we gonna have to pay for Grand Theft Auto 5?
Well, we don't have
Fix
to
it.
pay for it multiple times.
Well, I mean, them updating it for the next gen.
I mean, Bethesda did that with Skyrim, so that's a whole nother thing of like re-releasing the game.
So
I don't know how I feel about that,
yeah.
but
Yeah, that's kind of an aside, but I just a thought that's kind of different is what about like Kickstarter or crowdfunding games?
yes,
That's really voting with your dollar. That's like that's not even like I'm happy this thing exists and I want to support that. This is I want this thing to exist at all. And you know, I wanted this thing to happen that might not happen otherwise.
yeah,
Granted, there are some Kickstarters that are kind of like, you're going to make this game anyway. Why are you asking for crowdfunded money? But there's a lot that probably only exists because they were able to raise multiple millions of dollars to not only get them started on the project, but also maybe attract outside investors that realize that there is a market for this title. You know, the game I played last year, um, that I really liked and was a sequel to a cult classic that I also liked is Psychonauts 2. I don't think you've played that yet,
not yet.
but you know, I really liked the original game and I was happy to see it crowdfunded. I probably would have crowdfunded it, but I wasn't really paying attention to games about the time when they were asking for money. So I ended up playing it you know, eventually on Game Pass, but you know, that was one where I think they did a couple crowdfunded games. Didn't they do like Broken Age that was kind of a point and click adventure, and then they did
Yeah,
Psychonauts 2, and then they finally got bought by Microsoft, who was able to give them enough money to really make you know, realize the vision that they had for Psychonauts 2. I think they said they were able to expand levels and add boss fights that just wouldn't have happened without Microsoft's investment.
nice.
But you know, that all happened because many people were willing to put up money in support of this project.
Yeah, and I have mixed feelings about it. Um, with like kickstarting for like physical things, I think that makes a lot more sense than with games.
Like
Because
board games.
to some extent, it's just because things can fail and there can be frauds and stuff, or like if it comes out and you never know how long it's going to take for these things to be finished. It's tough to like put the money forward for that. You made some great examples of like AAA publishers shouldn't be allowed to go on there and be like, hey, we're going to kickstart this project. Like, no. That's not how that works. You have the money, spend the money. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Don't go asking for us to pre-order it ahead of time. That's the other thing. Like way ahead of time, some of this stuff is like, there's certain projects where like this literally doesn't exist if we don't get it crowdfunded. Um, and I think you can tell when that's correct and when it's not, or when it's legitimate and when it's not. Now, I haven't really, and even Steam Early Access, I get really weird. I've bought a few based on friends recommending to me, like, "What? Come on, man, well, play this is really cool." And I was like, "Okay, fine." But I really try not to get early access games because I don't know when they're going to be finished, or I don't also want to be burnt out on a game that hasn't been completed yet. So I get really weird about it, and I'm like, I'll keep it in mind. I'll keep it on my wish list, and I will be like intending to play and buy something when it's done. But I don't really want to invest in early access. I'll play a demo. There is a Kickstarter game I currently funded, which I'm happy to because like it's the only one of this kind I've seen. The project is called for a game Proto Droid Delta, and it's basically a 3D Mega Man X game. Their art style looks great. I got to play the they put out a playable alpha build. It feels like it's on the right track. It's going to be, a smaller indie game, but I was like, no one else is doing this. No one else has done like this polished an art style. No one's tried to like committed to like a full 3D action game. Like this is what I've said like Capcom should do is like just make a 3D character action game that's based in Mega Man X. Like just do it. And that's not what's happening. This person is, and I'm like, I love the concept of Mega Man X enough to see it evolve that I want to see this concept realized, and I'm willing to take the risk and be like, if that's what it takes. I want to put my money there. I would love to get a copy of this game. I would buy this. I hope it gets made. And there's been a bunch of updates, and it's on its way. I'm excited to see what the finished product looks like. But in general, I'm very picky. I think it's weird. I think it speaks to it's really a shame that it's so hard for people to go and take a shot at these things and not be able to put the time in to make these products. Now I know that there's a chance for abuse, but that's one of those things where you can figure this out. Like it's a system that can be figured out. And I wish that some of the people with money just weren't as stingy. That people have billions of dollars. Like there's no point in not reinvesting in it and allowing these things and seeing what comes of it. And even if it flops for some of these people, it doesn't even matter. Like they'll have so much money. It's if they lost $500 million, they would not lose a wink of sleep. It's
Yeah, they would. Yeah,
No,
they
no,
would.
they
For $500 million.
no, there's people out there that wouldn't care. It's a drop in the bucket.
I mean,
They would care
the
about
company the company is like, I don't know if they'd lose a wink of sleep, but they would care. These companies would if they lost $500 million.
Microsoft is a company that $500 million is chump change.
Maybe not Microsoft, but like some game companies would care.
Blizzard in its heyday, like with all the money they're making off of WoW, they don't care. 500 million is not a huge deal to them. Grand Theft Auto, Rockstar with Grand Theft Auto, like okay, maybe before Grand Theft Auto 5 and Grand Theft Auto Online, they might have cared, but at this point, they don't care. Activision makes so much money with Call of Duty, they can lose 500 million and it would not matter. They make so much money. The number that always sticks out to me, I think one of the Call of Duty sold like 34 million copies or 32 million copies. If you do the math on that and how much money, like they're fine, especially with the way they were doing DLC and stuff like that. Like, or any of the Epic won't care about 500 million. They are blowing money left and right. Like there are companies that could. I hope also like Valve. I was just talking about this with some friends the other day because we're excited for Steam Deck, and maybe by the time this episode goes up, who knows if I've gotten my email to pre-order my Steam Deck. Or to complete my order for my Steam Deck. I would hope Valve maybe starts becoming like a publisher and like giving people a chance. They have a platform now and they do like the wish listings and all that, but actually like funding projects, letting people come to them and then fund that, because like they have a bunch of game properties that nobody's doing anything with. They don't make anyone do anything, which is fine. Like that's cool, whatever. They're going a different direction. But that's where I think like it becomes somewhat of a responsibility for more people to do the right thing when there's so many examples of people doing the wrong thing. Like if you've got the resources, you should be trying to advocate for the right thing, like giving people a shot, even if it's a few select games. I'm not saying it needs to be tons of huge stuff, but I would love to see like Valve become a publisher, and I wish that more people could get in the publishing space and squeeze out and give Activision, Ubisoft, and EA some real competition and show them like you can't do this. Microsoft seems to be like it's a 50-50, of course, because a lot of things are going exclusive because of that, but exclusive in terms of Xbox and PC. Microsoft seems to want to be on other platforms, so we'll see how that goes in the future, and maybe it won't be as exclusive as we think. And it's just Nintendo and Sony being very resistant to, reasonably so, like letting those a competitor of some regard come onto their platforms. But a lot of that is like, well, what's the profit splitting? Like, why should we do this? I'm like, I it's really funny that Sony's actually resistant to Game Pass because if Game Pass was on PlayStation, PlayStation users would never have to buy an Xbox. Like, how does that math not compute? If Halo is on PlayStation, PlayStation people no longer have to buy Xboxes. They just have a subscription service on there. And it's just like, oh, okay. Like, now people are never leaving our platform.
It might happen. They might just have to come to an agreement on how they share revenue. Like,
I'm sure it's
maybe
yeah.
Microsoft wants their cut of microtransactions on games downloaded for Game Pass, but like it's like Sony and crossplay. They think they have their leverage, they want their cut in certain ways, and
Now that one I actually see why Sony's resistant. Like that one I can understand the business logic of like I'm not saying I agree with that they shouldn't go crossplay. I think they should go crossplay. I think that's just a good move. But I see the business side how that like has no benefit because it's like, well, we're trying to convince players who don't own PlayStations to buy PlayStations. So we have to hold your friends hostage in our ecosystem. Um, so it's like that might be the difference between, well, all my friends, I like Xbox, but all my friends are on PlayStation. Should I buy a PlayStation? Like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to. Um, then I'll go buy a PlayStation. Like that's what they're hoping happens. So I can see why they're like, well, if we let crossplay, then that means for those multiplayer games, then we're not getting a cut of those microtransactions, and we're not getting etc. So I see it. I don't. I think they should still do it, but I get why there's resistance. But as the consumer, I don't really have to care. They should just do the thing that's good for me, and they make enough money as it. Make your platform better. You want me to invest in your platform? Have a better controller, have a better system than your competitor, have a better storefront, have better deals. Like be the best. If you're not the best, then that's your problem. You know what? Like I I mean I own a PlayStation 5 as you know and the audience should be aware, but like I would prefer to use the Xbox Core controller for it. And if PlayStation suddenly said like, here, we did a firmware update, you can use Xbox Core controllers on the PS5 now, I'd be like like 50% more inclined to try and game more on my PS5 because I'm just like, holy crap, I can use the same controller wherever I want, my favorite controller wherever I want. Then yeah, that's great. Like I bought an adapter. It was like $40 adapter, so I can use my Razer controller, and I could use my Xbox controller if I wanted to, on my Nintendo Switch, and I'll like way more inclined because I don't have to use the bad Pro controller for games anymore. It's that right there. Sure, maybe I'm a niche person for that, but yeah, you should just make business decisions to make people happy, and then you'll make money. Like that's you get the good PR, and that goes so far. Instead, what they do is they try to bury bad PR.
so you're not a fan of exclusives, right? So
Not anymore. No,
have you been voting with your dollar when like Sony has brought their exclusives to PC? Like, did you buy any of those on PC?
I bought Horizon.
Okay. So
Um,
yeah, you're yeah, that's what I was wondering because I think
I
the only way you're really gonna have that Sony is gonna see the value in putting their games on PC is if they make a lot of money.
actually had a great point, and actually, uh, here's another great thing about this whole voting with your dollar that kind of is messy. So I agree that they should bring their games to PC. Also, I hate Epic Store exclusivity, and that's been happening a lot with
Yeah, I
Square Enix.
commend you. I commend you for your self restraint and waiting.
I don't even claim the
For
free games. I don't want to like as soon as their store and like I want competition. I've said this on other episodes too. I want competition. I think Epic Game Store could be a great competitor to Steam. Fantastic. Would love to do that. Don't have a problem with other launchers. You have to be a good service and a good store. You can't be just crappy and show up. And as soon as they're good, as soon as everything's like fixed and running well, um, then I'll be happy. And I think depending on when it is, I'll be happy to start claiming their free games. And then eventually, if things actually pan out, I may start actually spending money in their stores. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Like I'm excited. I want them to do well. I don't want them to do this like brute force shoehorning stuff, buying exclusivity, and whatnot. But yeah, here's the thing though. So the reason why Epic, so I skirt around some of the Epic exclusivity stuff by buying on PlayStation 5 because the games run well enough, and then I'll just play them there instead of having to do that. Now I've played a few indie games that I'm like, oh, when this comes to Steam, I'm gonna rebuy this. Kane: A Bridge of Spirits, I've decided I'll rebuy on Steam. But here's the thing, I actually feel bad about that. It kind of sucks, and maybe I have to make a hard choice. Well, for myself, really, is that do I buy the game now, and so more. This is more specifically with Sony exclusives because I wasn't expecting them to go to other platforms at any point, but it did eventually happen. Is that like I want to buy the game? Okay, if I buy the game on PlayStation, and support it there, and then eventually it comes to PC, then I buy it again. Sony got me to double dip. If I don't buy the game on PS5 or on PlayStation, Sony can interpret that as, oh well, you don't like the game. I guess maybe we shouldn't do anything else with it. Now that's not exactly what's happening, but the games that came to PC first for PlayStation were already wildly successful. So other than Days Gone, actually that was funny. Horizon Zero Dawn, incredibly great. Days Gone, not super well received, but eventually like word of mouth starts saying, hey, actually no, this is a secret gem. It just had a really rough review because the day one patch wasn't out. But then now they put it on PC, it was super optimized, and people are like, yo, this is a really great, this is actually a really good game. And I know all the news stories about Days Gone, but that's the thing where if I double dip, I'm also giving them I'm validating them by them doing their shady thing of actually delaying the releases and not doing them day and
the
date.
staggered releases.
Yeah. Then they're like, well, then we get people to double dip, so that's the better way to do it because that proves us right. And the same thing happens with Epic Game Store. It's like if I buy it on the console and then buy it on Steam, I got them to double dip. And the same thing already happens. There's people who, so Epic gives the companies, the publishers, a bunch of money for the exclusivity, 6 months to a year. There are people who buy it on, well, either way, they're getting the money, the lump sum from Epic. Then some people do buy it on Epic, and then it comes out on Steam, and then it explodes in sales, and that company just goes, why wouldn't I take Epic's free money? Why wouldn't I do this every single time and just make people wait a year to play the game on PC on Steam and then just reap the sales? So these companies get rewarded for doing the crappy things. And even if I don't buy it on Epic, Epic's brute forcing it with their own wallet to make it work. Now, granted, I want to see them make a good store, but they're just like, it's a loss leader thing. And it's not in the same way where Game Pass is like a loss leader for Microsoft because it's an extremely good service. People have problems going through like the Xbox app on PC and like using the Windows Store. They don't like that, and I get that, but otherwise it's an extremely good value. So no, people have a hard time arguing like $15 a month for the ultimate on console and PC, $10 for just PC. For the amount of games you get, plus day one Microsoft titles. Like Valve has publicly said, like, or Microsoft, I forget if it was Valve or Microsoft, like Valve is open to getting Game Pass on Steam Deck. So those two companies are talking. Like that's gonna happen. Or getting Game Pass on Steam in general. Like Valve isn't planning to do any sort of service like that. So allowing Microsoft to let people play games through their Steam account via Game Pass, kind of like the way EA Play works through Game Pass. But if your account isn't borked, yeah, you suck. You suck with your account system BS. Yeah, these companies just get rewarded for doing the wrong things, even when they're doing the right things. it's hard to know where to spend the money. Do I because the companies can also just go, well, if you didn't pay us, then it doesn't mean you want it. Like it's this flawed logic where we can't our money doesn't actually speak to the thoughts in our heads. It's because it's like, yeah, if we make a bad game that or we make a game that's not that great for very specific reasons, then we're not going to make a sequel because, well, you didn't like this, so clearly you don't want more of it. And it's like, no, like your game was busted. Make the game not busted and it's good. Make the sequel that's good and we buy the sequel. Like, fix your problems. Don't try to hold us hostage because that's what they do.
That's like, you were talking about the fighting games early on, people wanting to, like, gauge interest in the series. That's like,
It happened to Mega Man
like
Legends. They turned, yeah,
Nintendo putting out the new Advance Wars remake. It's like, well, if you want more Advance Wars, you better buy the same game that you already played with better graphics. So it's like
yeah,
you fans kind of feel obligated to buy every release in a series, especially if it's the one that doesn't get a lot of love. And maybe they generally do want to play it again, but I think most people would prefer a new title, but companies aren't willing to put that investment, like you said,
yeah.
when that's really what they should be doing.
Nintendo makes people rebuy games all the time. At least now they're tying it into a subscription service, but they're doing a thing that they're doing it backwards for Switch. I was trying to figure out if I could see a real reason for it that wasn't just weird Japanese business logic or like weird Japanese auteur business logic. Um, because as you know, that like as we all know, it's a very staggered release schedule for bringing games to the Switch's online services for Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and whatnot. Not talking about third parties. Third parties, I get it. That it needs a licensing deal, fine. For all the first party Nintendo games, especially from like the Wii and Wii U, like Virtual Console catalogs, day one, all of those games that were first party, plus whatever third party ones they could, secure, should have been on there. Now I know with Switch, what they've been doing is they're adding in the extra features and like changing up the emulator to like save states, rewinds, and online multiplayer. I'm not sure what other features they're doing, but I know those are like the big three to all the ones they update. Um, what they should do is they should have been like, hey, we're going to put the entire catalog on there, and then we're going to start updating games over time. So you can play the original version, and then when they then add value by being like, hey, now you can play online multiplayer in these games. Or these ones now have save states. Like they should have done that. That's what they should have done instead of just making people wait for these games. Also, they shouldn't have locked multiplayer behind the paywall. They should have just not done that. Granted, the price.
I don't think I agree with that. I think I'd rather when they put up the game, it be the version with all the features, whether it's the save state, rewind, or online multiplayer, because like I know that the greatest enjoyment I've gotten out of the Nintendo Switch Online, NES, and Super NES have been playing online, and I think if it did launch with those features, I probably wouldn't be as interested. Um, but I'm already paying for it, so it's like. But I mean, I'd rather the game just had the features, but
But there's no
I don't
there.
know. I get why they do it. They want to keep people subscribed.
But that's the thing. Like they put all those games up there. They'll add more games. They add more third party games over time, and then they also have then now you're getting updates. Like they could promise it. Like they said, like here's the game. Like here are the first five, and then like every month another five get the update, and also we add another five games every month. Like that still works. So I'm not sure that feels like a
I
very
just don't think
personal
I
thing.
would have gotten more value out of it than just adding the full featured game over time, because I probably wouldn't play the game until I got the updates anyway. So to me, it's like it doesn't exist if it doesn't have save states, rewind, and online multiplayer. So I don't think it would make a difference to me if they we get the half measure game and get the full updates later, or we just get the full game later. I'm probably not going to play it until we get the full game anyway.
So it's funny, and I'm not really trying to pick on you, Ed, but I feel like that's the kind of mentality there where like you're actually just advocating against your own best interest. And I would say that that's actually what a lot of consumers do too. It's like consumers get in a weird situation where they well, A, they don't want to care. B, they shouldn't have to. And this is the part where I'm like, we need some consumer responsibility because we need to not be advocating for bad practices. But also, it is on the fault of the businesses because people can only buy the things that exist or things that are offered to them unless they make them themselves, which not everyone has the resources to do that. So that's where I think like people also need to just kind of advocate for their own best interests, and that's where I think if we were more united in terms of understanding, like you going, you know what, I prefer it this way, but I understand why it makes sense to do it the other way, and so that's where I'm seeing there is I think if you think about it a little hard, it'd be like it's like someone's going, I don't need cross-platform multiplayer. All my friends are on PlayStation. Like
I'm
that's
I'm I'm saying it. I don't think it would have made it like if they put out Super Metroid Day One and it didn't have save states or rewind. To me, like it might as well not exist because I don't want to play it without those features. So, like, yeah, it probably would be better, but
But what's the problem with with them saying like, "Hey, Super Metroid's going to get the update down the line"? What's the problem with you being able to play the original version now and just being promised that an update will
there's no
come later?
problem. I just it wouldn't matter to me because it's not the full featured game. I'd rather like really what they should do is they shouldn't wait they shouldn't wait to launch a product that's not complete. What they should do
Well, it is a
is
complete product. They're adding features because the original thing didn't have save states.
well,
What
I
you're
mean,
saying, Ed, is
I
that you're
don't I
now a
don't know.
filthy.
It's not a
Um,
competitive product with what you get for free because emulators already have save states. So
but
it's like
emulators have a learning curve. They're not as easy as having the official thing. Also, Switch is something you can take on the go, and a
they're
PC
pretty
is not.
easy. Like RetroArch on Linux and Windows is easy, and I have
We
on my Mac I have OpenEMU. That's easy. Like all you do is draw. Like they they're pretty darn easy.
we have to take a step back because we're more of power users, we're more informed. Like granted, there's a lot more resources for learning how to do these things now online than there ever was, and kids are growing up with this tech, but like the general audience, like this is stuff they're not aware of, they don't care about, they don't really know, and there's still a learning curve. Like I get people who don't understand how to like subscribe to streaming apps or how to watch things or how to link accounts like on their iPads and stuff. Like it's we got to take a step back because I think a lot more people don't know how to do these things and aren't really interested than we give credit for. People who want to know will definitely find it, but that's always going to be a smaller market than the general populace who doesn't really care. And this is the other thing we're talking about here, like the ones who don't spend the money. So I would just say like and actually, I was trying to make a joke where I was like, "So Ed, you're admitting you're a filthy casual that you don't want to play Super Metroid anymore without save states."
Pretty much. I mean, older games, I like playing them with different modern features.
I
So
agree.
yeah, I
Yeah,
guess so.
yeah. I was just joking. I
I
agree with the
it would have
convenience
been it
features.
would have there's like 2 parts in Super Metroid that I think are really rough without save states.
Yeah, I
One of
hear you.
them is going to the wrecked ship to fight Fantoon, the second boss,
Yeah.
because there's a long area without a save point. And then the other is like the gauntlet from the save point to Ridley, where you like have to go all through these hard challenges. And like Ridley's a pretty hard boss. So it's like you're going to
Oh yeah.
die and then have to play this 3 to 5 minute period or not or more. So I could probably play it without save states, but there's 2 areas where I was glad to have them. But other than that, it's not bad.
No, I agree with the convenience features. I just don't think there's anything wrong. It's just like, so you're saying, like, let me harken back to this. So you should have said that, like, well, I know a bit about your personal taste, so this probably doesn't matter. So this is also like saying like I should be admonishing you guys for buying Super Mario Party without it having online play. The game shouldn't have existed.
I didn't buy Super Mario Party. I bought Mario Party Superstars.
Oh, okay, okay.
Mike bought Super Mario Party,
So did
but
Mark.
he
So did
probably
Mark.
didn't even buy it. I bet he asked for Christmas. He gets so many
Yeah.
games for Christmas that he's like he has
Hey,
to
that's
come
fair.
up with games that he'll never play because his family gives him so many games. Like
Yeah.
he got Metroid Dread, he got Kingdom Hearts 3, he got Red Dead Redemption 2. He's not gonna play any of those games.
Yeah.
And
That's
I
fine.
feel bad making fun of Mike. He's not here, but um I mean he's lucky that he's able to get so many options.
No, that's
But
fair. Yeah.
I
If you can get people to buy games for you, that's pretty awesome too. But yeah,
yeah.
um, I mean, it's still supporting. Like, as long as they bought new copies, then that's still supporting. He got them to support those games. I would prefer people people who are actually interested to play them and buy them, but at the same time, there are a lot of people who just buy copies who rarely play or beat the games that they buy, but they still supported it and they still like wanted to. So I don't really have anything to say about that. It's yeah, we're getting close to the end of the episode here. So yeah, it's just I don't know what to say. There isn't really a clean answer about this. I think that's the problem to solve. Is first off, consumers do need to be a little more conscious about how they spend their money, and you can at least look to like, hey, at least inform yourself. Don't buy a game if you don't like it. I think it's shown online also, like speaking up on social media has some power. We've seen some big changes in games happen because we've used the power of social media to reach out to these companies and say like, yo, make these changes. I'm super thrilled to see like Japanese companies hearing like from us about like adding rollback netcode into older fighting games and stuff like um, Atlas is gonna be Atlas and Arc System either way. Atlas Sega is gonna I guess fund ArcSys to let them put rollback netcode into Persona 4 Ultimax Arena as it comes to PC and PS4. So that'll be great. Um, ArcSys has already put retrofitted Blaze Blue Central Fiction and Blaze Blue Cross the Tag Battle with rollback netcode. The open beta on Steam right now for Cross Tag Battles rollback is really rough, but it's getting there. At least they're putting it to some way in. It's good that Capcom put in rollback netcode and is re-releasing all the Darkstalkers games, so at least those original versions will be playable for the rest of time, along with the Hyper Street Fighter 2, which I guess you could call the definitive version of Street Fighter 2, um, and more of their niche games and stuff like that. So it's cool when we see, and this is the pandemic helped emphasize like, look, online matters. Like these circumstances change, and this is another thing. Like circumstances could always be dire to the point that like you should be doing the right stuff for the game, and also you're limiting yourself by not doing things right the first time. You're not giving yourself an honest take, and you're not taking into account that the real circumstances of why something is or isn't successful. So it's really sad to see. I hope that we find more ways to hold publishers accountable and to reach developers and for more platforms to open up where like direct feedback can be shared. I know game makers, developers are collecting more analytics than ever on how people play games, but we also need to find ways to hold the companies accountable for the reasons that they're crappy and for the ways to take. I wish we could just take money out of their pockets for the right things, or to get companies to get funded on second chances, even with the right changes. So with the right changes. Um, who knows? Maybe Microsoft will be part of the harbinger for that. I mean, Sony does make a bunch of good games, but this, like they said, with the 10 service things, like what the heck's that gonna look like? Like, you can't do that. Like, that's untenable. It's unfeasible. It doesn't make sense. And you hear this everywhere. Like the problem is, the risk is too good. They'll do a bunch of flops because if they get one big hit that makes $1 billion a year every year, then it's worth it to them. And to some extent, that is experimentation, but it's experimentation in the wrong way. That's where like also we don't get these diverse catalogs of some smaller, well-funded indie games that are like, or like well-funded smaller games, I should say. Like I enjoyed Kena Bridge of Spirits. Sifu broke 1 million copies, and that's really good. I can't wait to get that game. Neo: The World Ends With You, I was planning on buying on a PS4, but I'm playing other games, and much to your frustration, I haven't played it yet. But I'm like, I want to get to it. I'm going to get to it, but I'm like, I'll either buy it on PS4 and play it, or we're closing in rapidly on end of July for the Steam release, for the potential Steam release. So there's that. I'm gonna buy Ghostwire Tokyo on Steam. I'm gonna buy Forspoken on Steam. Like, I'm excited for these things. Strangers of Paradise Final Fantasy is gonna be on is an Epic Game Store exclusive for the time being. So I don't know. I'll probably try that next year. I might rent it and then see how it is if I even care. We'll see how it goes. Kingdom Hearts. This is another thing. Like, that one's really close to my heart. No pun intended. I am so mad that it's on Epic Game Store, but as soon as that comes to Steam, I'll rebuy those. So
Are you gonna pay full price for that though? Because it's like
I
you can
doubt it.
get
I don't think it's going
the
to be
whole
full
series
price.
for $30 on PlayStation 4,
I already
and
did. I already own it.
they want like $180 for those all. Isn't it like 60 plus 60 plus 60 to get all the Kingdom Hearts games on PC right now
Oh yeah,
at
it's a
full
total
price?
ripoff. It's a total ripoff in Epic Game Store right now. But the thing is, usually Steam does like a big sale, so I'm assuming that they're gonna put on Epic Game Store and Steam. Like, when that time comes, it's gonna be the all-in-one package for like $40 again on digital, and that's all the games. So yeah, I have a feeling that it's gonna be cheaper. Also, yes, Epic just ends up being early access. Epic Early Access program, which is for 1 year, we're gonna pay you to have a buggy ass game, and then when it comes to Steam, it'll work. Oh, with Control, that ended up working out really great for me. I waited to play Control on Steam, and that game had rough issues when it first launched, and on both console and Epic. And then when it came to Steam, it was optimized. There was a bunch of accessibility features. It was a blast. So yeah, some of that stuff pays off for the consumer side, but it's just a shame because even what happened with Control, it just proved to them. It doesn't prove to them that they shouldn't just release day one on both platforms. It just proves to them, like, yeah, we just take the Epic money right up front, wait, and we should do the Epic deal, because keep doing the Epic deal because we get all the money up front, and then we'll just make more money down the line anyways. Who cares? We just plan on 2 big releases, and that's what sucks. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
how we punish them without them just going, well, if you don't spend the money the first time, then I guess you don't want it, so we're not going to do it at all. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is, other than, like, you know, directly holding these people accountable and not letting them do it.
Well, even you and I, who are somewhat, we're informed and we sometimes exercise self-control. We have the
Right. Yeah.
games that we care enough about that we're able to like bite the bullet and be like, well, I kind of feel like a clown doing it this way, but I want to play the game. So
Yeah. I'm,
everyone has the things they care about.
I mean, I bought 13 Sentinels on sale. You convinced me to buy
Yeah,
that. I rent my games and try them out, and then when I like them, I buy new. And I keep
yeah,
just a list. I try not to buy any extra games, and I buy the games in the order I play them. The only thing I kind of broke on that, well, I buy fighting games whenever, because I play those on the side. Some multiplayer, and I occasionally buy some early access. But I don't think early access is bad. I just think I think it could be a slightly better program. But I don't know. I don't know how. Yeah. I wish there was another way of assured accountability for those games. At the same time, there's games that are like an early access for like decades that like are still early access. I'm like, decades, really? Yeah, we're not at 1.0 yet, really. Um, and then yeah, I just buy the game. I bought Horizon Forbidden West on PS5 right away, but I went straight into Elden Ring because they were like 2 weeks apart, and I was not done with playing Scarlet Nexus to go into Horizon Zero Dawn. I still got to go back and play the post game content for Tales of Arise, but that's going to happen eventually, but we'll see how that goes. Plus, yeah, tons of good games. I try to have better habits. I really don't pre-order stuff. The only time I pre-order is I want the swag from a collector's edition, like you said, and I think that's fine because that's actually limited. There's really no like pre-order DLC. The only time, occasionally, and I think this is scummy, but a free character is a free character in like a fighting game. If they say, "Hey, this character's a pre-order bonus," I'm just like, "Come on!" Like the
as
game.
long as you can buy it later, like Piranha Plant and Super Smash, that was like an early purchase bonus. Like if you purchased it early, you got it, but you could buy it later.
No, but they're holding it for ransom. So that's why with the pre-order, it's kind of like the only way to like. There's no winning because you either
So
paid.
you can't buy it later.
You can. It's just there's no winning because it's a bad practice. Because they're like, the character's done. We're just withholding it from Piranha Plant wasn't done. Piranha Plant,
No.
it came out like 2 months later or like a month
Okay.
later. But I'm talking like there's some deal like you unlock this character or you can have this character immediately. Um, when it's there, like Soul Calibur 6, like the one character was a pre-order bonus, but she was ready day one. Tira, she was a character, a fan favorite character from Soul Calibur 3, and appeared in 4 and 5 as non DLC. And they held back the character um, as DLC for launch, and she was available at launch. So you got her day one if you pre-ordered, and you had to pay extra. So there's like, yeah, like that. But no, Piranha Plant was different. That character did come out like it was almost finished. That one I would say Nintendo like first party. I'm like, maybe you shouldn't charge for your first party characters for Smash Brothers. You should just give those to us as like free updates. Come on, like you saying Smash Brothers didn't make tons and tons of money. I get they're working with Bandai Namco developers to make that game, but Nintendo's got the money. We know they have the money. It's like to do that as a courtesy thing. I'm sure Smash Brothers kept selling more copies every time characters came out. I
Yeah,
would
you really hate to root for a company to like do poorly, but Nintendo treats their fans much better when they're not in a good situation.
well, no, all of the companies do. Like
Yeah,
Microsoft is doing this because they're
some of these
losing.
companies you want them they need to like eat some humble pie. Like I want them to have some failures to take them down a
Yeah.
peg.
Same with like Sony. Like Sony was on top again with the PlayStation 4 and 5 sales. That they're getting arrogant Sony. They're showing shades of that PlayStation 3 Sony where it's like, well, we're so on top of the game that we need to do like this is yeah.
$599.
We need to be able to hold these companies accountable, and we need to find some way to like. I wish there was a way to make them spend their money. Not profitable, but I like to just they have to spend their money and they have to do it the right way and understand these more sustainable business strategies and be less driven by these huge like bubbles of profit rather than, maybe just staying in business is good enough and funding a bunch of arts and having a bunch of new IP that you can eventually franchise later and cycle through and not drive people insane with. It'd be nice to not to see less exploitation of people and for us to find a better way to communicate like we're not going to handle this and to not let whales be the ones who are deciding what gets made because they have so few people happen to have a ton more money and just blowing it and they're throwing everything off, making everything worse for everyone else because they're the minority that
It
are.
shouldn't be feast or famine. They should want to have ethical and sustainable business every year.
My phrasing was really poor on that. I apologize to everyone about like the like just because they're a minority thing. Like I hope everyone understands where I'm coming from when I say that. But about the video games, like it's yeah, it's unfortunate because people getting like quality is suffering of these products, and it's getting encouraging to be bad. So yeah, that's about it. You'll hear me harping about it throughout. You've already heard a bunch of these points from previous topics as well. It's a shame. Buy games new, but make sure you're making informed purchases and don't feel bad about waiting. Um, and Ed, did you have any other closing thoughts?
You're right about not pre-ordering games, and really, like, if there's a game you wanna play and you can wait even, like, a week after it comes out, get an informed opinion, like you said, try it. Like, they'll be just as happy with you buying it within 2 weeks versus day 1. So,
Yep.
you can still support games that you want to and still make an informed opinion.
Yeah. Rentals, um, videos, Twitch streams, demos. Try before you buy. Make informed purchases. Do your
Even just
best.
word of mouth, you talk to your friends that like
Word of mouth.
you know my gaming tendencies and you can like I'm gonna try Elden Ring because I'm my friend has an extra copy, but you probably know me well enough to know that I'm not gonna like it. But so I
Yeah, and I'm
probably
not.
wouldn't spend.
I've never recommended it to you. I have just
Yeah.
mentioned it,
I
and
but
all I.
I but I asked you about it. I asked
Yeah,
you what you thought, if I would like it, and you gave me your honest opinion.
yeah. I
Like,
said no.
your friends know you well. You can find reviewers that you identify with streamers, so it's like it's never been easier to be more informed, just people choose to be woefully ignorant. And I do that sometimes,
Yeah.
but
And I've even said, like, even if knowing that you won't like it, I'm like, go ahead, try it. Like, it'll be really
yeah.
interesting to see what your opinion is. And I just say, like, I'm not saying you need to stick with the game. I won't even give you a crap when if and when you drop it. And if you stick with it, that's really cool. I'm glad you found something new. And I've always said, just go ahead and try it. Even if that's what I've done with GameFly. I've like, this looks interesting. I don't know how much I'll like it, but I'll at least try it. Like, I've had games that I've turned around and really liked, and I've had things I put back in the mailbox after 20 minutes. So, yeah, I hope everyone got something away, took something away from this, or at least got a little more informed about that and is thinking about how to be a better consumer. Um, Ed, thank you so much for being with me again. And everyone, take care until the next time.
Bye.